Hello, beautiful souls, and welcome back to Gaia Sanctorum. This video is the start of the Astro-Herbalism Apothecary. I'm Danielle, and I've been working with food as medicine and plant medicine for over 30 years. This series is different from most herbal content that you're going to find online. We're not going to do surface level overviews of 20 herbs in one video. We're going to go deep, one herb at a time, and we're going to organize them by astrological timing, working with the herbs when their planetary rulers are most favorable. Now, here's what I want you to understand. I'm not trying to teach you everything there is to know about each herb. First of all, that would be impossible to do in one video. And honestly, that's not how herbalism actually works. What I'm going to teach you is how to build your own relationship with these plants, how to observe them, how to document what you see is working, how to think about herbs through the lens of planetary medicine and the five bodies. Now, we're going to start with some Saturn herbs because we're moving into a period where Saturn's herbs and the lessons that they teach are particularly relevant. Saturn teaches structure, boundaries, and embodiment, and a lot of us need that medicine right now. Today's herb is one of Saturn's most powerful teachers, and that is horsetail. So let's dive in. Horsetail, scientifically known as Equisetum arvense, it is from the family Equisetaceae. Say that 5 times fast. Common names will tell you so much about the traditional use of an herb. This one has been called scouring brush, shave grass, pewterwort, and bottle brush. This is because people used to use it to scrub pots and sharpen blades because when you touch the stems, they feel rough and almost abrasive. That is the silica content. It literally feels like very fine sandpaper. Now, this plant is a living fossil. It has been on the earth unchanged for about 300 million years. It survived the dinosaurs. It survived multiple mass extinction events. And think about what that means. So this is an elder teacher. Now, when you look at the sterile stems and those jointed green stalks, they look exactly like a horse's tail. Each segment fits into the next, hollow, but still incredibly strong. It's flexible, but it's structured. And horsetail is structured very differently from most plants due to its ancient development. So it consists mainly of a stem, branches, and leaf sheaths or branch sheaths. Now, the main stem is a central upright stalk, and the branches or lateral branches are going to be the thin, needle-like, hair-like structures that come out in whorls around each node of the main stem. Now, that's what makes it look like a horse's tail when you see them together. Now, the leaf sheaths are these papery tube-like structures that wrap around the main stem at each node with teeth or points at the top. Now, horsetail tends to grow in moist areas. It's going to be along riverbanks, in ditches. It spreads through rhizomes and can be invasive, which tells you something about its vitality. Now, it's best to harvest the sterile green stems in the spring and early summer. An important note, please make sure that you have the right species. Equisetum arvense is what is used medicinally, and it does have a toxic lookalike called Equisetum palustre. This is marsh horsetail. It does have toxic compounds that are not present in medicinal horsetail. Here's the best way to tell them apart. So you cut a branch and you look at the cross section. Arvense branches are solid, whereas the palustre branches are hollow. Also, the arvense has 3 to 4 teeth on the leaf sheaths, where palustre has 5 or 6. So if you are wildcrafting this medicine, proper identification is non-negotiable. If you're not sure, don't use it. Source it from a reputable supplier. So, planetary rulers. Horsetail is ruled by Saturn. Saturn governs structure in astrology, anything that is hard and enduring: bones, teeth, skin, connective tissue. Saturn rules crystallization, mineralization, and the process of building what lasts. And Horsetail, it literally mineralizes your tissues. That massive silica content strengthens bones, cartilage, connective tissue, arterial walls. And the correspondence is not poetic metaphor. It is very precise medicine. Now, Saturn also rules boundaries, limitations, and the container that allows for manifestation. And we'll see how Horsetail works with boundaries across all 5 bodies. Now, here's what's important about timing. Horsetail is particularly powerful during Saturn transits. If you're going through a Saturn return, which happens between 27 and 30, and then again 58 to 60, this plant can support the work that Saturn is asking you to do. The same with any hard Saturn transits. So when Saturn is aspecting your personal planets, especially if you've been feeling scattered or ungrounded or like you're losing structural integrity on any level. And also, Saturday is Saturn's day. So if you're working with this plant intentionally, Saturdays would be a potent timing for ritual or conscious dosing. This section is crucial because energetics tell you when to use an herb and when not to use it. And this isn't just theoretical, this is clinical assessment. So the temperature is cooling, which is why Horsetail reduces heat and inflammation. But it's also drying and astringent. This is Saturn's contracting quality. It tightens, it tones, it pulls things in. It creates boundary where things have become too loose or leaky. It tastes salty and astringent, and the salty taste connects it to the mineral kingdom directly. It literally tastes like earth and stone. And the astringent quality is tightening, drawing in sensation that you feel on your tongue. As far as tissue states, Horsetail addresses atrophy and laxity. Tissues that have become weakened or depleted, stretched beyond their capacity to hold form. And it also addresses dampness where fluid has accumulated inappropriately. So basically, it brings tone and structure back to tissues that have lost their integrity. Now, let's touch on constitutional types because this is key. Horsetail is not for everyone. It's for people showing signs of Saturn deficiency, lack of structure, weakness in hard tissues, and an inability to hold boundaries. So here's who does need Horsetail. Anybody with a slightly chilly constitution that is not severely cold, a tendency towards tissue weakness or laxity, anybody showing signs of mineral depletion. And then there are also constitutional factors for who does not need Horsetail. So this is somebody who is already very dry everywhere or who is very cold all the time. They are definitely not one you want to use Horsetail with. Anyone who is rigid, constricted, depressed from excess Saturn, or someone showing signs of heat and inflammation as their primary pattern. This cooling, drying, astringent, mineralizing energy. This is the lens through which we understand everything that Horsetail does across all 5 bodies. Now, the primary actions of Horsetail are astringent, diuretic, it's a vulnerary, which means it heals wounds. It's hemostatic, which means it stops bleeding. It's also tonic and anti-inflammatory, antimicrobial, and antioxidant. Now, the main constituent that we care about is that silica. It's up to 25% of the dry plant by weight. and that's extraordinary. Most plants have trace amounts, but horsetail is basically mineralized plant matter. Now, it does also contain a few other different compounds, but honestly, the silica is kind of the star of the show here. This is what makes it Saturn's medicine. Now, research does show that horsetail promotes bone mineralization. It may help reduce osteoporosis risk. It works as effectively as pharmaceutical diuretics without stripping electrolytes. And it supports wound healing, tissue regeneration. The German Commission E, which is Germany's regulatory body for herbs, has approved it for urinary tract infections, kidney and bladder stones. That is significant clinical validation. Now, horsetail's high silica content, which is up to 25%, makes it specific for structural weakness. Matthew Wood identifies what he calls silica depletion syndrome, and it's a brilliant clinical observation. So you want to look for these patterns clustering together: brittle, ridged, or cracked nails, thin, breaking hair or premature hair loss, weak, easily bruised skin, nervous nail biting or skin picking, chronic sinus issues from weak mucous membranes, tissue laxity, things like varicose veins and hemorrhoids, any kind of problems with weak bones, slow healing fractures. Now, when you see several of these together, that's how you know that this is a person that needs horsetail. So, key indications: weak bones, slow healing fractures, osteoporosis, joint erosion. For these, Wood combines it with Solomon's seal for arthritic joint erosion. Now, weak bladder, incontinence, chronic UTIs from weak tissue lining. Now, keep in mind, this is not for edema that comes from heart or kidney failure. Brittle hair, nails, thin skin that won't strengthen with other remedies. And then we're going to move on to the mental body. So when Saturn is deficient mentally, thoughts scatter and won't coalesce. Wood describes this lack of nerve not as a lack of courage, but as a literal loss of nervous system integrity. Things like racing thoughts, an inability to focus, excessive worrying, mental picking at problems, nervous behaviors, fidgeting, somebody who can't settle. The mineralizing action helps rebuild cognitive boundaries, the ability to contract around what's important and to say no to distracting thoughts. Now, in the emotional body, you're looking at things like emotional porousness, right? They cannot maintain boundaries. They absorb everyone's feelings. The person who says, I feel like a sponge, or I can't separate my emotions from others. Self-soothing through picking or pulling or repetitive behaviors. Matthew Wood identifies this as part of the silica depletion picture. It's the body trying to create boundary through the only means that it knows. So horsetail creates emotional containment when you've been leaking your energy everywhere. Now, in the energetic body, you're going to look for all of the symptoms that we've talked about before: brittle nails, weak hair and skin, chronic UTIs, tissue laxity. Generally speaking, fine boned, slightly chilly, a tendency towards dryness. Behaviorally, nail biting, skin picking, difficulty sitting still. What Wood describes as a nervousness to the point of fingernail chewing. When you see these patterns together across multiple levels, that is a Saturn deficiency. That's silica depletion. Now, there are red flags for this herb. You do not want to use when somebody is already very dry and cold and rigid. If they have severe depletion or emaciation, or if hot inflammatory conditions are their primary problem. Now, when you're using it, you'll know that it's working because the nails will strengthen, the hair improves, the bladder tone increases, the nervous behaviors decrease, and the person's going to feel more grounded. Now, on a spiritual level, Saturn teaches limitation and that it enables the creation of our manifestations. Your bones are not your cage, they're your sacred architecture. Now, the patterns you're going to see here are a difficulty with embodiment, spiritual bypassing, boundary issues, especially during energetic or any kind of psychic work. If they are going through a Saturn return or a major Saturn transit, people who need to learn that saying no is sacred. Horsetail has survived 300 million years teaching one lesson: embody fully, build strong, stand upright, which is particularly powerful during Saturn returns and Saturn transits. Now, when we're talking about dosaging and preparations, when you're making medicine, you use the sterile green stems. You want to harvest them in spring and early summer. Now, if you're making a tincture, for dried herb, it's a 1-to-5 ratio. For fresh herb, 1-to-2, 1-to-3. If you're not familiar with tincture making ratios, please go look that part up first. Now, you're going to take 30 to 40 drops of tincture in water 2 to 4 times daily with your meals. If you're not familiar with making tinctures, you can make a decoction. And this is actually better than an infusion for horsetail. You need heat and time to extract the silica. You want to use 2 to 3 grams of dried herb per cup, put it in a pot with a lid, bring it to a boil, and let it simmer covered for like 15 to 20 minutes. Strain it, and then you can drink throughout the day between your meals. You can also take that strong decoction and use it externally. Compresses for fractures and sprains, hair rinses for your scalp, foot baths for embodiment work. Now, because of the thiaminase content, I recommend 2 to 4 week courses with breaks in between, or low dose long-term use if you're assuring that you're getting adequate B vitamins. Always reassess at 2 weeks, 1 month, 3 months. Now, I'll combine this with Solomon's seal for connective tissue and joint health. You can combine it with milky oat for nervous system depletion alongside boundary issues. Nettle is another great nutritive support plus mineralization. You can also use nettles if they need the mineralization, but not the horsetail. Now, if horsetail is too drying, you can add marshmallow to it to help kind of moisten it up a little bit. So there are safety and contraindications for this herb. And this is important. So take notes if you need to. Horsetail has thiaminase content, right? It is an enzyme which breaks down thiamine in the body. Thiamine is vitamin B1. Now, long-term use without adequate B1 intake can lead to a B1 deficiency or a thiamine deficiency. What this means practically is if you're using horsetail for more than a few weeks, you need to make sure that you're getting adequate thiamine in your diet. So there are lots of foods that are high in thiamine. Nutritional yeast. This is my go-to recommendation. Easy to find, easy to consume. Sunflower seeds, black beans, lentils, navy beans. If you eat meat, pork, brown rice, whole grain breads, peas, asparagus, Brussels sprouts. If these foods are genuinely inaccessible to you, please consider taking a B complex supplement, but I generally will always recommend food first. Now, if you're using it short term, just for a few weeks, it is generally fine without worrying too much about this. Now, there are situations where horsetail is an absolute no. If somebody has edema from heart or kidney failure, not your herb. If they are pregnant or breastfeeding, not your herb. There's just not enough safety data. Children under 12, it amplifies the thiaminase concern. And also, people who are on pharmaceutical diuretics already could have additive effects. So remember, if someone is already very cold and dry and contracted, if there are no signs of silica depletion or tissue laxity, if the bladder issues are from heat and infection rather than weakness, don't use it, just to be safe. Now, if you see blood in your urine, sudden urinary retention, severe or persistent bone pain, undiagnosed edema, or any condition that requires pharmaceutical diuretics, please make sure that you seek medical care right away. And again, make sure that you do have the right species. Equisetum arvense is medicinal. Equisetum palustre and some others are toxic. Proper identification is non-negotiable. So that is horsetail. Saturn's medicine. It's ancient, it's structural, it's enduring, and it teaches us that boundaries are not prisons, but the sacred architecture that allows an embodied life. It's for the person who needs to learn that having edges doesn't make them rigid and that structure can actually set you free. Your bones are not a cage, it's a cathedral. For 300 million years, this plant has been teaching the same lesson. Embody fully, stand strong, stand upright in the world. Now, here's what I want you to do with this information. I have created a Materia Medica framework specifically for documenting your own plant journey. It's a digital download that walks you through recording each herb across the 5 bodies framework, botanical identification, energetics, planetary rulers, indications for physical, mental, emotional, energetic, and spiritual bodies, dosing, safety, your personal observation, and combinations that you discover. Because here's the thing. My relationship with horsetail comes from 30 years of working with this plant, and your relationship will be different. You need to document what you see working with your own body and the people that you serve. The Materia Medica includes a 30-page ebook and 30 blank monographs, plus this complete framework for each herb. Over time, you get to build your own living herbal reference library based on your direct experience, not just what you read or what you watch. You can find the link in the description below. Start with horsetail if you're being called to Saturn's medicine right now. Document what you notice. Build your practice from the ground up. Thanks for going deep with me today. Next time, we'll explore another Saturn herb through the 5 bodies lens. So subscribe and turn on the notifications so you know when the next planetary medicine drops. Until then, I'm Danielle, and I'll see you in the next one.